This is a really quick video about counting significant figures. To start out, we should look at which figures or which digits are never going to be significant. And these are leading zeros. Zeros on the left hand side of a number. We always start counting from the first non-zero digit on the left to determine our significant figures. So for example, if we have 0.02583, we would start counting from the 2. That's the first non-zero digit. 1, 2, 3, 4. We would have 4 significant figures. Now non-zero digits are always significant. Zeros between two non-zero digits are also significant. For example, if we have 0.0250097, we would start counting the significant figures from the left, from the first non-zero digit. So our first non-zero digit is a 2 again, and we have 1, 2. Now these two zeros here, these are between non-zero digits, so these are also significant. So now we have 6 significant figures. Trailing zeros after a decimal point are always significant. A trailing zero is one that comes on the right hand side of the number after a non-zero digit. For example, 25.8300. We start from the first non-zero digit on the left, which is the 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we get to the 0. Because these two zeros are after a decimal point and they are trailing zeros, we count them as significant digits. So this is also 6 significant figures. Now the really tricky one is the trailing zeros before a decimal point. If the decimal point is shown, we consider these to be significant. Now this is not an absolute convention. Sometimes you end up with a period which can look like a decimal point, and it's hard to know whether or not the number of significant figures is to include that as a decimal point or whether it's a period. So you have to be careful here. It's best seen with a couple of examples. 2500, we have 2 zeros that are trailing zeros here. Now the general convention is that you would start from the left, from the first non-zero digit, which would be the 2, and then we would say that this has 2 significant figures. And we do not count these trailing zeros. Now instead of writing that as 2500, if we write that as 2500 with a decimal point at the end, now we're fixing that decimal point in place, and we're saying that these 2 zeros can now be significant. So with that decimal point there, the 2 is our first non-zero digit, and we count all 4 of these digits. And we end up with 4 significant figures. What if we want to write 2500, but we want to write it to 3 significant figures? Well, we have 2 options for that. We could write 2500 and then in parentheses write 3 significant figures. Or we can use scientific notation and we can write 2.50, that's 1, 2, 3 significant figures, multiplied by 10 to the 2. And this would show us our 3 significant figures. We don't need to worry about whether or not there's a trailing zero that's counted or not. We can see that this is always going to convey the number of significant figures without having to write out what they are after the value. So using scientific notation is a really useful tool when conveying numbers for scientific use.